At Bexar Facts, we amplify the voice of the people to shape the future of our community. We gather and share fact-based data on the issues, attitudes, and trends shaping the greater San Antonio area. With the Bexar Facts podcast, we breathe life into our data. We aim to level the playing field by producing real conversations with real people and bringing scientific data directly to your fingertips. Bexar Facts, your trusted local source for community data.
To another episode of the Bexar Facts podcast. I'm Liza Barratachea, and I am joined by my colleague, Demonte Alexander.
Hello, good to be here.
And our guest today is the CEO of the San Antonio Food Bank. He's been in San Antonio since 2001 and has seen tremendous need for hunger relief in Bexar County in 16 counties that the San Antonio Food Bank services. He has an incredible personal story and has built the local nonprofit into an inspirational and aspirational operation that is giving people food, opportunities, and hope every single day. Eric Cooper, welcome to the Bexar Facts podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you both.
Well, we're so thrilled that you're here today, and we know you had a big morning, and we want to hear more about it. But we all know you as the food bank guy. You have a very high-profile nonprofit, and we see you on TV a bunch. And so people see you and know your face, but maybe they don't know your background and how you got into this wonderful organization called the Food Bank. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal story and how you came to San Antonio?
Yeah, Lisa. So I've had the privilege of working in the space of food banking for about 27 years. But What led me to this work was an opportunity that came out of crisis. My parents had gotten divorced and I was estranged from my father, and ultimately found him homeless on the streets of Portland, Oregon.
Oh.
And it was in that moment of finding him homeless that I realized that he was nourished because of a woman that went the extra mile. At the end of her day, she took food that was perishable from her business and fed the homeless. And it just changed me. I was asking myself, what was I doing to ease the struggle that we go through? And it led me to the food bank, and I tell you, it's been just an amazing journey ever since.
The whole story, your story, and the whole story of the food bank is so exceptional, but it's really unbelievable to me that the food bank supplies food for 16 counties. How is that even possible?
Yeah, it's so much bigger than any one individual, and I think of the amazing community that we're a part of, and the food bank is just a reflection of that incredible city. And so I know when I started here almost 20 years ago, we were a different organization. We had about a 40,000 square foot warehouse, 18 employees, and we were distributing about $10 million worth of food and in a year's time. And so I knew the need throughout South Texas. I knew that we could become so much bigger and larger than what we were. And so with a lot of hard work, I think a tremendous amount of luck, and then just the incredible support of our city, we fast forward to today. And, we're blessed to be on a 40-acre campus. Our facility, 210,000 square feet. We're adding some exciting new expansions, but we now deliver close to $150 million worth of groceries to those organizations and individuals throughout South Texas. Most people know the San Antonio Food Bank, but they really don't know the details of how we work.
Right, you guys do so much, yeah.
And excited to share a little bit about that with you guys today.
Now, Eric, when I first met you guys and got familiar with your work, I was actually working in District 2, where I became familiar with Mobile Mercado, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, when you see that vehicle drive around, and a lot of our communities don't have access to fresh produce and fresh fruit and vegetables and those types of things. So I thought it was so innovative, such a creative idea to have. To whoever thought of that was just genius. And obviously, with 3.8 million Texans have applied for unemployment benefits since March, I know you guys have been really hit hard. I know we've seen the iconic photo. I think there's the mobile mercado there, which I thought was great, and also participated in several of your golf tournaments that you guys have called Doing Good on the Greens. I participate every year. But I just want to go into, you are a successful entrepreneur. Your leadership and business strategy has been recognized locally and nationally, and the Wall Street Journal, the National Geographic, even the Huffington Post. Tell us about some of the changes and new endeavors you have brought to the food bank. You mentioned that it's this is an organization that's been around for a while. Tell us about some of those changes.
Well, Demonte, the golf course actually called, and they said that you left several of your golf balls out in different areas of the course. That if you wanted them back, that we could probably make that happen. But no, thank you for all the years of support and the great work that you've done in District 2 and the food bank. 40% of what we distribute is fresh produce, and really trying to create access to healthy food for families is a critical part of our mission. And we give out produce, but we also give a dose of education and helping families understand healthy recipes and what to do with those produce items that we're distributing. And it was there on the east side that families said, look, Eric, you're great. You provide produce, but we don't have a lot of traditional retailers, on the east side. We could use more. The H-E-B on Houston Street gets a lot of traffic. And so the mobile mercado was really, born out of community and just, the desire to have mobile access, maybe more convenient and strategic locations where families could use their earned income or their SNAP benefits to be able to purchase healthy food. And I like to kind of equate the mobile mercado to a healthy ice cream truck, right?
There you go.
It drives around the city and hits those food deserts to give a little hydration, right? It's really trying to make sure that it shouldn't matter where you live. All of us should have access to healthy food. And, it's a great team that's around me. It's a great community. I have the privilege of working in both for-profit and nonprofit. And I do think that the nonprofit space is much more challenging. You've got to be super nimble and super creative. We work on a budget of faith. It's the belief that we're going to be able to fulfill our mission, and it defies logic. But our city and our supporters continue to defy logic. When I think of just the response of this pandemic, we've seen unprecedented demand. I mean, the need has been huge, going from 60,000 to 120,000. But equal to that has been the response and the support that's come from our amazing corporations and individuals and churches. And so I can't help but be grateful as I sit in the crossroads between those that have and those that don't have. And we're just trying to make sure that that people are nourished.
Gotcha.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the pandemic, but I also think you're so humble in not talking about all of the extraordinary things that you have brought and you have initiated there. The culinary center I know is in progress, but in addition to moving into a bigger facility, you created a garden, an exceptionally large garden that you are working with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and doing workforce development, that you've branched out into affordable housing and New Braunfels. The gaming processing plant that I know you are currently trying to raise funds for.
I thought that was fantastic. I didn't even hear about that until Lisa told me about that.
They're really exceptional initiatives that take a lot of thought and guts to do. And I know guts is a strong board, but I just really wanted to commend you for the work that the great work that you've done in our city, and really that has affected South Texas, so many people, especially during this, really exceptional time.
Now, is it still true that the food bank is ranked in the top 2% in the nation in terms of for operational efficiency? I've heard about this across the city. People, man, that place is ran like a well-oiled ship, man. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? About, how did you come in, and that culture? How did you get that moniker that, you're one of the top in the 2% in the nation in terms of operational efficiency? Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, Demonte, despite the leadership at the food bank, we continue to prevail. But my staff know the phrase, squeeze the buffalo off the nickel. And I think that just means we want to be as lean as possible. We want to make sure that when it comes to people's investments in us, that we're delivering the strongest ROI as possible. I learned from my for-profit experience with searching for venture capital that many investors just wanted to get a healthy return on their dollar. And so bringing that principle into the nonprofit world, when we take in donations, we might not deliver the return back to the donor, but we'll deliver a healthy return to the community. Mm. And so when you think of watchdog organizations like Charity Navigator, they really look at how much of the dollar actually gets to the program and how much is kept as admin. And for us at the food bank, it's 98 cents out of every dollar that goes directly to our program. We're committed to running the food bank on just 2% administrative overhead. And that actually ranked us in the top 2% of all nonprofits in America. So we're just humbled to have that recognition. I think we want to be as efficient as possible because the mission requires it. And
is that where we hear the I think $1 feed 7 families? Does that attribute to that?
That is, Demonte. That's part of the ROI, that we want to make sure that we're delivering for our donors, but we also want to make sure that we're delivering for those that we serve. And it's just a great mission to be a part of.
So I want to start talking a little bit about the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, the mayor said that we've exposed cracks in our city's foundation that have been unaddressed. In our first poll, we asked a question about whether Bexar County voters thought elected officials have done enough to adequately respond to the rising levels of poverty. And 64% said no. And we also, when we polled, we learned that almost 30% of respondents were only just or having trouble meeting their living expenses. Just as someone who is very familiar with poverty and who works around it and sees it in a very tangible way, do you have any thoughts on policies that might benefit our leadership, that can, policies that could address these systemic concerns of poverty in our community?
Yeah, Liza, you mentioned all of our creative strategy to address hunger, but ultimately it's the belief that hunger is a symptom of a bigger issue, and that's poverty. And people in poverty have lots of issues going on. Someone that's hungry just has one issue. And until you solve that one issue, you can't start to address the complexity of poverty. I tend to think of that parable of, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach him how to fish and feed him for a lifetime. And I tend to frame that in not a or, it's an and. You have to do both. And in the space of the work of the San Antonio Food Bank, if you don't pack a tuna fish sandwich, she won't meet you at the dock. She can't. Her babies are hungry, right? She wants to learn how to fish, but she's solving the immediate crisis of the now. And so any approach needs to be in tandem. It needs to be dual. It needs to help stabilize the household while helping those families move towards self-sufficiency and self-reliance. And so at the food bank, we frame our work into those three areas of what we call food for today, food for tomorrow, and food for a lifetime. And our food for today strategies are really those that people know. And that's our food pantries and our food distributions that get families groceries or meals. But it's our food for tomorrow strategies that really are helping to stabilize households by helping them apply for SNAP or WIC, or get health insurance through Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program, long-term care for seniors. And all of these federal safety net initiatives really bring some stability to households. And then our food for a lifetime strategies is around meaningful employment. How can we get those that are unemployed and skilled connected to jobs? How can we get those without skills trained and then into employment? And then overarching all of that is our commitment to nutrition education and making sure that families know how to prepare the healthiest meals. And San Antonio struggles with chronic diseases. I mean, high rates of diabetes and heart disease, and all these are food and nutrition issues. And so the approach has to be holistic. It has to be, comprehensive. You can't just nail it with one silver bullet. It's more like silver buckshot. You have to be super strategic, but you got to do a lot of things. And I think more needs to be done at a policy level, both at the state and local level, that needs to impact how struggling families, are treated, and how, low wage employers oftentimes, exacerbate the problems that families are going through. And I think of just, when we think about sick leave and PTO, the importance of that, and to be able to give employees time off that comes without losing your compensation.
Well, Eric, what I found is that, lots of people who were contributors to the food bank have now become dependent on the food bank, which was now around the pandemic. And also, since you're talking about workforce development, we were thinking about, man, how can we tie this into data and the facts and the policies and what we're doing? Like, wait a minute, workforce development has a significant impact on the purchasing power, right? If there are no jobs, then people will lose the ability to adequately purchase food. And so we're like, wow, we do have, the food bank covers just so many different policy areas. Even if it's not directly tied to food, there's so many other things that do that. But I just found that fascinating. I think I read that in an article somewhere where, a lot of your contributors are now depending on you to feed them and their families, which, I want to stick right into the pandemic, which obviously this year, the San Antonio Business Journal named the San Antonio Food Bank the nonprofit of the year. So the accolades keep coming. Your organization captured the world's heart after an aerial photo showing thousands of cars in line from a mass distribution at Traders Village after that went viral, which went around the world, from what I'm understanding. How has the pandemic changed or impacted the operations at the San Antonio Food Bank?
Well, I tell you, William Luther, who was the photographer of that aerial photo, captured something that we knew already, and that was so many families in our Riverwalk economy were living on the edge. I mean, Lisa pointed out San Antonio ranks as the highest rate of poverty in a metropolitan area in the country. So we struggled with feeding 60,000 people a week in an unemployment rate of 2%. I mean, a time when maybe more people should have been thriving, 60,000 people struggled. But COVID-19 knocked so many families over that edge. And for us now to be feeding 120,000 people a week has been overwhelming. And I think the image that was captured in that photo, said what data maybe couldn't. And it really highlighted the level of scarcity and fear and the basic need of food that for many take for granted, right? They're not worried about where their next meal is coming from. And, you can say we're paycheck away from a crisis, but that photo showed that 3 weeks into the pandemic, when families' last paychecks were spent, they became desperate, and to be able to have a strategy where they could come and get those basic needs met was pretty incredible. And the fact that our city and our food donors and funding and all of that came together and continues to come together so that we can make sure that no family goes hungry is pretty amazing. But it's something that weighs on me every day, that we're collecting and receiving enough food so that we can meet the demand until the economy picks up and that our line shrinks. I mean, ultimately, that's what it's about. I want to get families out of those parking lots and into grocery stores and nourishing themselves and their families how we all want to be nourished.
So operationally, things have kind of remained the same. Obviously, you can't really say that we've beefed up employers because of COVID. You have social distancing, and so operationally, it's still the same mission, still the same protocols and things you use. You just have to find more creative ways to do it, I'm imagining.
You nailed it. I mean, I think we'd always done those pop-up distributions well before COVID, but typically they'd see a couple of hundred families, and it was a way to get fresh produce to families quickly. But at the onset of COVID, it went from a couple of hundred families to a couple of thousand families, and that was a safe way for families to drive through a distribution, keeping themselves safe and the volunteers safe. And so that trend and strategy just expanded, and we fed 625,000 distinct individuals through that strategy since March. And there's about 900,000 individuals just in our 16 counties that now find themselves food insecure. And so it's been overwhelming to see that kind of demand. And we've got a lot of work to do to get those families back to self-sufficiency.
Well, I know you had an event this morning, a super event this morning. Do you always have a strategy in place for an emergency of this type of proportion?
To say that we did, I'd be untruthful. I mean, I think we never imagined this scale. We fight the daily disaster of poverty, and when a natural disaster occurs, we step up to that too. You think back to Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and recently Harvey and Irma, and I mean, just these hurricane responses that we might have evacuees, and we're feeding them and we're helping along the Gulf Coast, but nothing for this duration, nothing with this high level of impacted people, and that's what I think what's been different. And but I'm just, words can't even describe, like, to see the support that's been coming from our city to be able to meet this need. I mean, I always say that the best thing I can do to leverage a dollar is by taking someone's investment and using it to capture food in the supply chain. Well, what happened during COVID is the supply chain got tighter, and we actually took in less donated food, which caused us to have to buy food, which is not the best economical return on the investment, but it's what we had to do. And we've spent close to $25 million just in buying about 1,000 semi-truckloads of food. Wow. All of that food now has kind of come and gone. I mean, it's been eaten, it's been distributed. And so we continue to operate at this pace where we're continually, purchasing or getting food donated, and it's coming in and going out. And we just hope not to overdraw the food bank, right? To make sure that the deposits are equal to the withdrawals.
Right. Now, you mentioned this city, but when I was working for Councilman Trevino at the time, and we did a very extensive food bank. All the council districts did a food bank drive for the food bank. But what I understood at that time, it's not just San Antonio. You guys support a region, right? So it's not just San Antonio you're supporting. Could you talk more about the footprint that you guys serve?
Yeah, well, Liza mentioned, I mean, we had a large distribution this morning at the AT&T Center, and it was incredible to see so many families here in Bexar County. But we serve 16 counties, and
There you go.
in a couple of days we'll be doing our distribution in Comal County, and then Guadalupe, and all throughout South Texas.
I think it's important for people to know that, because they think San Antonio Food Bank and they think, oh, it's just San Antonio. We're talking about 16 other counties that have municipalities inside of those counties. And I just want our listeners to really grasp the footprint that you guys cover.
Yeah, I think it is. It's because of our brand, San Antonio Food Bank. I think a lot of times people assume we do just serve San Antonio, but it's within those 16 counties that there's 2.5 million residents. Again, 900,000 of that 2.5 million residents find themselves food insecure because of COVID-19. And so we're working to try to make sure that it doesn't matter where you live in those 16 counties, that you have access to food. And so pop-up distributions like what happened at the AT&T Center are happening in every community, every city in our 16 counties, where we've got partner pantries, or we're doing these pop-ups to make sure people get access to good nutrition.
So we've done 4 polls this year, and consistently we've seen concern about homelessness and domestic violence and child abuse, and low wages and homelessness. While they are not at the top, they are definitely in the sphere of the most important. You have a really unique, so you see there, so here's our numbers. And this is from our 4th poll. You and your team have a very unique perspective on poverty. What do you think we can do to change food insecurity in our country? And what policies do you think that we could help champion in order to impact the trajectory of people and families who are most in need?
Well, Lisa, thank you for bringing attention to these critical issues. And I think that food kind of cuts across all of it, right? Food is a basic need. And I see time and time again where when someone's hungry, they're more irritable. And I witnessed a mom with her kids in our lobby, that her kids were pulling on her pants, trying to get mom's attention, and kept nudging, mom, what's, I'm hungry. What's for dinner? And the mom kind of leashed out in kind of that panic, like, that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to solve that problem and get food from the food bank. And, I do think that there's a lot of domestic violence and child abuse that occurs because of the body's reaction to scarcity and inadequate nutrition. And I think food has a calming ability. It makes us feel full. It's satisfying. And when someone's hungry, there's a lot of discontent. Now, it's not the cure-all, right? I absolutely know that domestic violence and child abuse and all of these things are complex, but food tends to run through. Do I pay rent, or do I buy food? Do I pay for medicine, or do I buy food? And those exchanges, when we can provide food, oftentimes we're saying, look, pay your rent, stay housed, let us cover this expense in your household. It ultimately boils down to a child can't learn when they're hungry. And we've got to make sure that kids continue in their education and that they grow healthy, absence of chronic diseases, and that they gain as much education as possible to compete in the workplace, to be able to provide a sustainable wage and a livable wage that can sustain them, right? And
that's admirable.
And so you have to talk about, the hourly wage. You have to talk about the benefit package. You have to, talk about PTO. That I think those are the policies that say, look, the minimum wage should have a maximum age, right? It's great if you're in high school, but it shouldn't be the wage you make when you're a single parent. And I think that, a job should pull people out of poverty, not keep them in poverty. And that's ultimately what it's felt like the last few decades here at the food bank. I mean, I feel like the food bank's been a part of the benefits package of a low wage employer. And I don't have all the answers for every business. And I know it's tough to stay competitive as a business and pay a higher hourly wage and give access to healthcare to your employees. But ultimately, we have that question to answer as a community. Do we want families in line at the local food bank, or do we want them moving towards self-sufficiency and self-reliance? And if we do, I think we've got to do more for them.
Eric, with these, I'm surprised some of these for-profit companies haven't tried to pick you off and say, "Come work for us" with some of your philosophies behind business.
Sure, they've tried.
Yeah, you spoke about a lot of different issues, policy issues, which are all important, and which leads me to, if you had a magic wand, what would you do?
It would be to bring more understanding and less judgment to our community. It's real easy and quick to judge, but it takes a little bit more studying, like you are doing through your polling and really getting the data to see what's happening. And once you see what happens, it brings a greater appreciation and maybe more tolerance. There's issues that are systemic, and you have to talk about equity and you have to be more inclusive, and we need to celebrate our diversity. We have to be able to realize that racism has caused a lot of harm. I know, poverty impacts everybody, but poverty can be a racist. Poverty can pick on Black and brown people statistically more than whites. And we have to get to the reason why that's the case. We have to think of our future destiny as a destiny that's full of opportunity for everyone. And I think that comes with understanding. I think there is some fear and there's some hard conversations to be had, but if people are willing to come to the table and set aside, historical paradigms and the thought that we always have to win, we all have to find common ground, and we have to realize that it shouldn't matter what zip code you're born into. All of us deserve quality education, access to healthcare, and your zip code shouldn't determine your life expectancy. That's just wrong. And unfortunately, that's the reality. And so we've got to work as a city with elected officials to address these core root issues, and business has a role to play. I mean, business is good. I think sometimes business is made out to be bad guys, but I always bring us back to, Adam Smith, the father of capitalism. It was an anti-poverty strategy, right? Wow. To have a job and support yourself is a good thing. And I think everybody has a place at the table to solve this problem.
Wow. I thought former Speaker Joe Strauss, his magic wand answer was like my favorite, but I think he just got trumped by yours.
Thank you. Well, Joe's an amazing individual with a lot more in his future. So I can't wait to see what's next.
Us too. Eric, we want to be helpful to you. We want to support you. Christian Archer, who was not able to be here today, he has asked us to relay to you that Bexar Facts would like to contribute $5,000 to the food bank to support your efforts. And so we, in addition to a financial contribution, we want to help you. What other ways can Bexar Facts help the mission of the San Antonio Food Bank? How can we be an advocate for you and help you in your mission?
Well, you all have been amazingly kind to me personally as I've overcome my scheduling and technology issues. That's probably enough, but I am just overwhelmed. Thank you for the generous gift. And as Demonte said, you can times that by 7, and that's how many meals your gift will provide.
Wow. Incredible.
The 4 things that we need most is food, time, money, and voice. Food through food donations, time through volunteerism. Obviously, we talked about the leveraging effect of $1, but voice is a critical part of where I think understanding comes from. And so just challenging your listeners and viewers to, take this message and share it. I mean, you hopefully learned a little bit more about your San Antonio Food Bank today. Become an advocate and help educate people on the issue of hunger and poverty. Reach out to elected officials, share strong policy recommendations that we're sharing as we shape the response to people's crisis. I think there's always a place for prayer. Offering a prayer on behalf of those that struggle can go a long way, but using your social media, you all are using your platform and your data to help shape. And I'd say that is what's needed most is truth is important. And in a world where, there's been a lot of accusations around journalism and fake news, I applaud the media for being able to put truth out there. And I think we all need to be just really seeking understanding and less, quick to say, oh, I don't believe that, but really listen. Right. Talk more and listen, or talk less and listen more is probably the best strategy.
You mentioned something, Eric, and that's what we want to do. We want to amplify the voice of the community. That's what our platforms are for. That's why we do our polls. We want to make sure the community is involved in some of these policy discussions. So thank you for mentioning voice, because it's so important to us as well.
Thank you.
Well, we'd love to continue to partner with you. If there is an opportunity for us to do so, please consider us your partner. And if there's something that you see in regards to a poll or information that you might be interested in finding, please let us be a resource to you as well.
I will definitely take you up on that. And I'll just share really quick. There's a Texas state policy around asset testing for families applying for public benefits. And I think those are important measurements that in some ways help to sustain life versus a livelihood. I think there's a thought that, hey, we want to make sure these families qualify, but specifically an asset test around vehicles that are worth more than $15,000 oftentimes keeps families from qualifying for SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So we're encouraging the Texas legislature and the governor to waive the asset test in the time of this pandemic, which would allow those families that, as you mentioned, Lisa, in the beginning, that were donors to the food bank. They had jobs, they were self-sufficient, but now because of the economic turndown are now turning to the food bank, but they can't qualify for SNAP because their car is too valuable. We don't want them to lose their vehicle and lose transportation. We want to be a safety net, and SNAP is designed to be that safety net, but there needs to be a policy modification to the asset test to allow for those families to get SNAP so that they don't have to, the only place they can get food right now is the food bank. And we could get them out of our parking lots and into grocery stores with a quick policy change.
There you go.
Well, thanks for that. We certainly will do some more investigating and see how we can amplify that, that very specific need and ask. Well, I know that you have an important phone call this afternoon, and we know that the food bank is doing so much. And I know that because of the pandemic and the length of the pandemic, it's been difficult for you to see the future and how funding comes, and research from the state, research from federal government. And so there's more stuff we can do to help you. We wish you the best. We're so proud of you and what you've accomplished. And we just look forward to seeing what's next.
Well, thank you both. And you're giving me energy. So thank you. And it is truly a privilege to serve and be useful. And there's nothing better than making our city proud. When those you love give you the attaboys, that's what's most special. And to be able to meet the needs of struggling families and know that they'll enjoy a meal because of this great city, it's incredibly rewarding. So thank you.
Thank you. And tell Mario we said hello. We love him to death. He's all over the place. And a good buddy of mine, Frank Pacasciuti over at Botica, told me, you better tell Eric hello for me. Tell him we wish him luck and we're standing by him. So I sent that message from Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.